I just need to minimize the people because I can't see what I'm doing otherwise. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through how you can go from crap creations to consistent in Canva. And there's some key features that you can implement, things that you may or may not be aware of that you can start using, and sort of various sort of branding tips as well, sort of principles that I recommend you sort of take on board. Okay, so I sort of touched on it a little bit earlier in my sort of my 45 seconds, but Canva is a free and paid for design tool. It's both online, there's an app for your phone, you can have it through your browser or download it to your computer. You can do anything from sort of Instagram posts. You've got some examples of video presentations. So this is a presentation. It's a template I created myself, but there's loads of templates there. So you don't have to start with a blank piece of paper, as it were. And I think pretty much anything is covered in Canva. You know, even things like book covers, all sorts. There's some really great tools in there that, you know, and particularly for non-designers and startups or smaller businesses that maybe can't afford to outsource to a specialist like myself. This is a great way of making sure that what you're communicating, particularly online, looks good. But just because you're using a great Canva template doesn't mean you're going to do a good job of, like, you know, putting your own spin on it. It can go horribly wrong. So I'm going to talk through some things that you can keep in mind to make sure that hopefully you've got a better chance of, at the very least, being consistent. And if you're consistent, you're going to look more professional. And it's something I'm going to bang on about quite a lot. Okay, so first thing you want to do is do a bit of brainstorming planning. So particularly if you're a new business, this is a great time to work out your product, services, you know, what's your USP, pricing, message, target market, all of that. This is a snippet of one of the brainstorming templates. So you could do it all in Canva, you know, make it look great. You could print it out and have it on your, you know, notice board, or have it as a sort of living document that is, you know, Canva is quite cloud-based, I suppose, for want of a better word. You can access it online anywhere. But this is also a great thing to do at any point in your business, particularly if you're planning to launch maybe a new product or service, or you know, maybe sort of thinking ahead to the next 6 months. Particularly, you know, we tend to have sort of natural breaks in when we sort of look at what we're doing. So particularly like the new year, you know, is a great planning time, or the run up to the new year, thinking about, you know, what's happening in 2021. Looking forward to the new year. I think we're all a bit over 2020. But yeah, so really keep in mind all of these things, because it's really important to know, particularly, what is your unique selling point, you know, what makes you different. And then you need to sort of think about who your target market is. You can have more than one target market, you know, you don't have to just have one. But the reason why it's useful to have an idea of who your target is because it means you can, everything that you create to promote them, to communicate to them, will be with them in mind. So this is where sort of having an idea of, you know, what does your customer look like in terms of where do they shop? You know, what age are they male or female or both? Do you have a particular niche, and what problems do you solve? So really doing a little bit of work. The more detail you can go into this, the better, and it will you know, influence every decision you make in terms of what you're doing with your brand and the sort of what you're doing on social media. Okay, so the first thing I recommend people do is define your brand colours, and there's something called a brand kit, and this is available both in the free and in the pro version of Canva. So this shows you the sort of the dashboard of the brand kit in a free version, and it's a bit more limited, so you can only put up to 3 colours, and you need something called a hex code, which I'll talk about in a bit more depth in a moment. And you can only have one defined palette. If you've got the Pro, you can have more colors in that, you know, palette. You can rename the color, the palettes, both in the free and Pro. And you can also have multiple palettes in the Pro. So the Pro is particularly good for if you're managing more than one kind of brand, you know, in terms of what you're creating and want to have it in there. And by defining your brand colors, it means it will pop up every time you create a new template. And it will always be there, because you need to be consistent with the colours that you're using, not just, oh, well, it's vaguely that shade of purple or that kind of orange, you know, it's kind of okay, you know, and then it's chopping and changing, because, you know, even if there's only a subtle difference, it does make a big difference. You can also upload your brand fonts or define them, and you can upload non-Canva fonts if you've got the Pro. You can upload your logos in this bit if you've got the Pro, but you can upload your logos even in the free one, but you would do it as if it was an image. So don't panic too much about that. So I mentioned about if you don't know what your colours are. So for example, if your logo was created by someone a while ago and you're not in touch with them, it was done in Fiverr, how dare you, don't use Fiverr. Or for whatever reason you don't know what your colours are, you can use various sort of colour picking tools. Some are better than others. Canva's one is okay. There are other ones available. You can see here that this one is more about sort of creating some color palettes, so it's, you can upload images of any type, you know, to sort of create a color palette as it's shown here. But you could use it to upload your logo in there, and hopefully it would pick out key colors there and put that in there. And then it will show you what the hex code is, which is here. So it's got a hashtag and then sort of letters and numbers there. Okay, another key thing of making sure that your branding looks good and professional is being consistent with your fonts. So ideally using the same fonts on your website. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly the same font as what's used in your logo, so don't get too worried about that, although it can be nice if you use something that is either very similar or the same font, or it could be something that maybe contrasts. It depends on what your logo looks like, to be honest. And the type of fonts that you're going to be using is also going to be driven by, again, who your target market is. So if your target market is very kind of like a youth age group, you're working with like a lot of youth groups or something, maybe something that one of the fonts that you use is maybe like a graffiti style, for example, bit more kind of spray painty look, versus something where maybe it's in the financial services, might be possibly something more traditional. But it depends on what your own brand values are, what kind of look and feel you have. So there's knowing the kind of the commonalities between the type of fonts used, but also knowing when to break them. But if nothing else, at least be consistent with what you choose using, you know, when you're within Canva from now on. So something that you can do is create like a brand guidelines, or in this case, like it's just a logo overview. And this is where, this is some brands that or logos that I've created, and these guidelines that I've created for the clients, which shows the colors with the hex codes that I mentioned, the different versions of the logo, and the different fonts that are used within Canva, and some sort of samples of that. So you can see at a glance what's going on with your brand, or at least, you know, because your brand is not just your logo, your brand is your colors, your fonts, your logos, and much more. But as a sort of bare minimum, putting something like this together means you've got this reference, you can use it for yourself so that you can make sure that you're consistent if you're doing your own stuff in Canva, or if you're hiring someone else to do work for you. So for example, if you're outsourcing someone to do your social media, someone to design a website. If you need a website, I also do website design. Just saying. And also, you know, anytime you're using someone else to do work for you, this means that you can send it to them and they can follow that, and it makes their life easier, and it ensures, hopefully, that consistency. There is also brand guidelines template. So if you want to go into a bit more depth, you can kind of have a multi-page document. There are various templates within Canva. You can talk about things like your values, your mission statement. You know, you can show examples of the images, sort of, and other things that shape, you know, what your brand is all about. I'll talk a little bit more about sort of things like images and how you can make that kind of more stylized in a moment. Okay, so image filters. So if you think about this, image filters are used a lot, particularly on Instagram. You know, there's lots of filters that you can add on your phone and various apps and stuff. But it is something to consider. I don't often use an image filter. It's not something that I use all the time for my own stuff, but it is quite useful occasionally to use. And it can create a particular look and feel with the images that can go that extra mile. So it depends on the image itself, what kind of look and feel you're going for. So this is sort of, there's a number of standard ones that are available within Canva that you can really, at a click of a button, make your image into, you know, have this filter applied. So here's some examples of Canva's image filters. So you've got an example of these tulips, one without any filter, one with the one called Peony, you've got the blues, Afterglow. So you've got a real range there, and you can see immediately with the same image, you get a very different look and feel. So again, it's about picking, if you're going to use a filter, it's considering what it brings to the table, what does it add to your brand, and is it relevant for the message you're trying to put out there. So this is another example of sort of using the filters or overlaying of colours, but also I wanted to quickly talk about the choice of images are going to be really important. So again, knowing who your target market is and the style that you want to portray is going to shape that. So this is the concept of a meeting. So I know right now we're not really doing face-to-face meetings, but you know, in the good old days, you would have something like maybe in a boardroom, these people on the left, they're in suits. It's a very corporate looking image and would appeal to a particular type of client base, and also sort of certain industries. This would look really good in like a brochure or in social media, etc. On the right, however, this is sort of maybe more appropriate to sort of show what a meeting would look like for a smaller business, or something that's maybe more creative, more informal, very people-centered. You can see that it's taking place in some sort of cafe environment. People are wearing sort of more casual clothing, and it's just a very different vibe to it. You can also put overlays of coloured blocks. So this is where you've got a semi-transparent block that you plop over the image. So you've got an example. Far left is just sort of like a navy toned block that's semi-transparent. So this is great to be able to, so that you can put text on top, or if you want to colour it up. It's just another way of styling it up instead of, or in addition to, using a filter. In the center of the corporate image, that's just no filter, no effects. And then you've got a black and white filter applied to it. And then you've got a yellow kind of band over the whole, the sort of more informal meeting. Then you've got no filter. And then there's a sort of, I think, peony, or one of the purpley pink ones. So you can see that all these different things can really make a big difference when you add them all up. So don't just pick the first image when you're sort of searching for something. Maybe be a little bit more creative in your search terms for your images. So here's a top tip for adding photos. This is particularly useful if you've got the free version of Canva, because when you're in the free version, there's sort of about maybe half the images are not available free. And I think, I can't remember if you can pay for them as individual, but it's a bit complicated. They keep changing how it works. And some of them are only available if you've got the pro account. However, if you go down, you're in your template. If you click on the three dots where it says more, it brings out another tab, and you've got access to Pexels and Pixabay, which are both two free image doc libraries that Canva bought a couple of years ago now, I think it is. So they're integrated there, but they're a bit hidden away. So every time you open up your template, if you want to access them, you have to kind of go and sort of show them up, and then they pop up temporarily in that sidebar. Okay, so choosing a template design. So again, it comes back to knowing who your target market is, what your kind of look and feel is, what the message is. So really think about the purpose, first of all, of what you're creating. So, you know, is it a Instagram stroke social media post? I personally tend to just use the Instagram template, which is square across all. There are various of the best practices on that, but I'm lazy and can't be asked. So square it is. Then you need to be considering, again, you know, what is the purpose? What are you doing with this? You know, what are you trying to promote? And also the style aesthetic here. So we've got an example which is quite clean and simple. You've got a bold and graphic, you've got bright colours. And so you can see that the focus of each of these three are very different, and the focus is brought in different ways. So for example, the one to the far right, it's very bright colours, the sort of orangey red tone, which is sort of, you know, it's appropriate for this sale image that it's promoting. You know, it's very eye-catching. So think about it in the context of, if it's a social media post, when people are scrolling through, if they're literally going to look at it for a couple of seconds, what would they take in that would make them want to read more of that image, but also take the time to read your post, and then hopefully then click on, you know, for your call to action. And always customize your template. So make sure that, you know, whatever you pick, that you are updating the colors, updating the fonts. Consider maybe changing up the image itself if you want something more appropriate. You know, just because this is a Valentine's post doesn't mean you couldn't reuse it and create it as a sort of Christmas related post or anything. It could be used for something else. So don't feel limited by the fact that the template is maybe created for a certain purpose. If you like the composition of it, you can use it for all sorts of things. And you can also sort of apply your own filter. So you can see that one's got pinky tones, and I've applied a sort of bluey green one to fit in with the aqua colour palette. So over time, you want to be building up your set of templates. So they don't all have to be cookie cutter the same, but they do need to be part of the same family. And over time, you will see that there's this kind of brand language through the colours, the fonts, you know, how the logo is used and all of that. So have a bit of fun with it, but making sure that once you've decided on your kind of templates for different things, that you try and mainly stick to it. These are just some examples of designs that I've created in Canva. So I've even created a roller banner, you know, flyers that I've updated for people and created myself, logos, Facebook headers, all sorts. And then just finally, I did put some links in the chat about my free group. I am running, it's called Lovely Canva Crew, and on Monday the 2nd, I'm running a free 5-day workshop where I'm going to be covering a lot of this, but in a lot more detail, and a lot of like hands-on training and screen sharing of me doing stuff. So I'm really excited about that. So if nothing else, please come and join my Lovely Canva Crew group. There's lots of great advice, and you can share stuff that you're working on. So that'll be lovely to have you there. I'm going to just see the chat quickly. Okay, there wasn't any questions. So that's me. I'm going to stop sharing and I can look at you all. So, wow. Does anyone have any questions based on what I've sort of talked about? I tried to sort of give a good overview of certain design principles. Cheryl said that she really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, totally got lots from that. I mean, we've used Canva, but you've given us some fabulous more insight into how to get the best out of it. So that's